of every NASCAR Cup Series race. Here are your hosts, Kevin Batstone, NASCAR Sky, and Jeff Davis.
Welcome back to Mash the Gas. I'm NASCAR Sky. Joining me shortly, Kevin and Jeff, and we're going to chat about this past Sunday's race at Michigan, the FireKeepers Casino 400. Then we're going to get to talk about NASCAR in Mexico City. But before we get into that, Jeff, I have to ask, who mashed the gas the hardest?
Well, man, I'll tell you, it was a tough one, but Denny Hamlin, he brought it on strong right at the very end. He did what it had to take, getting his 57th career win. He's only 3 wins away from tying Kevin Harvick on the 10th of all-time win list, and it was his 3rd win of the season. So, as he said it at the end of the race, I beat your favorite driver.
He said on Actions Detrimental Day that his dad texted him and said, "Son, you really got to get some new material. That one, you've used that one enough." And Denny was kind of joking about it a little bit. But look, big win for these guys. He now is the most wins for Joe Gibbs Racing. Kyle Busch had 56 over there, so Denny now has the most wins for JGR. They're going to have a big banner for that. Only led 5 laps. Man, the fuel strategy just worked out. Chris Gale, all those guys on the 11 team, with the exception of about taking his gas man out, it was a pretty flawless day. Good speed for those guys. They was able to race around the 24 before he ran out of fuel. Just all around a good race. Only led 5 laps, but this is a big win for Denny Hamlin because he's not the best road racer. We've got a lot of road courses coming up, so I think he feels pretty good getting this win in the bank.
Definitely good, to get 3 on the year. It's also, Hamlin is definitely good behind the wheel, but just in general, like mentally, pulling his gas can or pulling his gas guy out, and then he had that little incident. I think it was in stage 2 with Larson where he dropped, I don't even know, like at least 5 spots minimum for sure. So it's good to keep your head in the game like the entire crew and realize that, stuff like that will happen, but as long as you can keep going, you can make a good outcome out of it.
Yeah, and Denny, he has what it takes. He's been in the sport long enough. I mean, I do think he'll catch Kevin Harvick on that, 10th place as far as all-time win list because he's got wins left in him. All he needs to do is hoist that trophy, and we know he can do it because he's been there. I mean, he's been right there. He's been so close. But like I said, hey, he only led 5 laps, but it doesn't matter. It's the last lap that counts. And I'll tell you what, man, Carson Hocevar actually did really, really impress me this weekend. I mean, he was up there the entire time. He ran a pretty damn clean race. And, these guys try to get the most grip out of their tires so that, they can get some good speed on it. And unfortunately, that tire went down and it cost him a lot of spots. I think he finished somewhere around P20, but he led 32 laps, second to William Byron leading 98 laps. But Hocevar, I mean, he's someone that we're going to be talking about. I mean, Spire does have an affiliate with Hendrick Motorsports, and I've been hearing a lot of scuttlebutt lately. I was like, is Chase Elliott or the 48 car of William Byron, are they kind of having to keep an eye on him? I don't know because it's tough. I mean, Hocevar, he's young, he's got a long career ahead of him, and he's a damn good driver.
Well, he's certainly proven that race in and race out. I mean, obviously, looking at the final race report here, finishing 29th, isn't the stat that we want to highlight because his day was fantastic up there until that, and the fact that he was able to limp that car back to pit road without spinning it out, going down into turn 3 there with all that speed, just great car control all around. He's been up in the front the last 3 weeks straight. He's been in the conversation. I definitely think he makes the playoffs. As far as where his future goes, we were kind of touched on that a little bit last week with the future of possibly Alex Bowman in the 48, possibly Chase Elliott. Who knows? I think that he just needs to go out and run his race. He's in a good spot with Spire. These guys have a lot of speed, and I think we're going to see Hocevar find victory lane here real soon.
I was going to say the same thing. I think we're just like right there. He's about to get that first win, honestly, in no time. But it's good to see Joe Gibbs kind of step it up. I didn't quite see everybody else finish. I don't know, maybe one of you did. But, I mean, Briscoe's got 3 poles in a row. That's something to be proud of, too, in and of itself. So hopefully they can get it together. I mean, Penske didn't have a very good day. They finished, 2 cars outside the top 30. So the little things like that, I mean, they add up for sure.
Yeah, rough day for Team Penske all around. I mean, we saw what happened with Ryan Blaney there. Just got loose, got up into the wall, wrecked it on the pit road, and his day was pretty much cooked. Joey Logano, we really didn't hear much out of. Obviously, Austin Cindric was up there competing a little bit, into stage 1, beginning of stage 2 there. But then those guys just fell off. So I don't know. The Fords really weren't. They didn't bring the speed that I thought they would from Penske. We had talked last week about RFK. All 3 guys finished in the top 10 there. I really thought this was going to be Brad's chance to go up there and get a win. And man, Chris Buescher too. Led 13 laps. Jeff, I think that's who you took last week. Another solid finish for the 17 team.
Yeah, it really was. And, like you said, Penske unfortunately did have a pretty bad day. Ryan Blaney, I felt really bad when he spun out there, finished P33. And, Joey Logano, he just didn't have what it took this weekend, finishing P23. So Austin Cindric, though, hey, how about that? Stage two, second place. So, I mean, I got those orders wrong as far as finishing orders, but Austin Cindric, that's one thing I wanted to talk about. What did you guys think about that accident where I think he kind of come up? I mean, Alex Bowman took a super, super hard hit. He said that was one of the worst hits he had ever taken, nose directly into the wall, smashed it. But to me, it kind of looked like the two came up a little bit on the 41 car and unfortunately kind of collected Daniel Suarez in the 99 a little bit. But I don't know if he just drifted up the track or there, I think there was plenty of real estate. It was just a really unfortunate situation.
Yeah, it definitely was unfortunate. I'd have to see a replay. I watched it a few times. It didn't look like the two did, but it's also so hard to tell, especially when they played in slow-mo a million times. But I'm just glad the 48's okay because we never want to see hard hits like that. And I think it was just one of those instances, where got four wide and it just didn't work out the way that they probably anticipated for sure.
Really hard hit though, nonetheless. The 48 really just was not running well at all. I mean, those guys were in the back. He was losing a half a second, three-quarters of a second a lap to the leaders. He, going a lap down, and then on that restart, like you said, they got kind of just ran out of real estate. I mean, there's so many grooves there at Michigan, which makes the racing fantastic. And we saw so many guys able to carry speed and make runs, dive bomb in the corner, slide job off. We saw that with Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson coming off turn two there. When old Kyle Larson came on the radio, he's like, "Look out your windshield, Danny." He was getting all kinds of pissed yesterday. Don't usually hear that out of Larson. And he had a nasty wreck in the World of Outlaw race Saturday night, rolled that thing a few times on the old dirt track. Similar to what happened to Alex Bowman last year when he broke his back. So fortunately, everybody was okay.
Yeah, that was a tough one, man. I saw that replay on old Kyle Larson. He had to have been pretty sore for this race, and he was up there. He was doing a really damn good job. But you look at it right now as far as the playoff picture goes, Kyle Larson technically is in first place as far as the playoffs go with 3 wins, and Denny Hamlin securing P2 now for 3 wins, and then Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell is a little upset. I understand it, but it's tough, man, when it comes down to these playoff races, or not playoff yet, but we only have a few races left pretty much. We got what, 14, 13 races to go before the playoffs go. But there's a lot of guys right now that are kind of sweating it. I mean, Ryan Preece and Kyle Busch are both pretty much tied right there. Preece is ahead just a little bit because of driver points, but we've got these guys on the cutoff. Carson Hocevar, he's only 18 points behind. So I definitely think as long as he gets a win or even points his way in, there's a good chance that we're going to see Hocevar in the 77 car get into the playoffs. And that's why I'm wondering, okay, eventually is this going to shake up Hendrick Motorsports? I'm not quite sure. It's kind of hard when you've got, NASCAR's most popular driver in the 9 car. Everyone loves him. I know Rick Hendrick loves him. He's a good guy, but this is a sport where it comes down to performance. And if you can't perform, your contract comes up. There's going to be guys that are going to be looking at, hey, do we need to change it? Do we need to switch our lineup? So as of now, you guys know the only team that has all their drivers in is Penske. So, hey, another thing about Penske, I'm sure you guys saw, Dodge is actually coming back to the Truck Series. I mean, the last time Dodge was in the Truck Series, I believe, was 2012, right after Brad Keselowski won his Cup title with Team Penske. So it's going to be really cool. What do you guys think about Ram coming back in? Old Dodge Ram.
I'm excited about it, and I think it's going to be a good test market for if we see, the Dodge Stratus or, some of the other makes that we saw back in the day work their way into, the Xfinity series. Do we see it make a return to Cup? We've been hearing for years that a new manufacturer is coming, and I was under the impression it was going to be, Honda, maybe Nissan was rumored, but I'm happy to see it's an American motor. Dodge had a huge part of this sport for many, many years, and I think the Truck Series is kind of a good way to break it in.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I love seeing any type of good positive change into NASCAR. I think it brings it brings different opinions, different avenues, different backgrounds for people. It brings jobs. So I definitely love to see anything good like that happen for sure. I'm really excited for this weekend. I know we'll get into it a little later, but on the whole thing of it, everything being new, or I guess newer, brought back. But yeah, it was a really good race. I mean, I really enjoyed the race altogether. Like people like, Hocevar, he really surprised me. I know we mentioned before, I don't know if I jumped in or not, but he's just, I don't know. I just feel like we're right there on his first win. And I don't know, maybe it is this coming up weekend or maybe in the next few. But I mean, I definitely feel like he's going to be one of those drivers. He's outside the playoffs now, but I don't think that that'll be an issue. I could see maybe the 48 having an issue, but it all just depends on his luck. Sometimes, he can race really good. He's good at road courses, but sometimes luck's just not on his side.
Yeah, it's true. He's definitely had an up and down, go of it when it comes to the road courses. We saw what happened at last year, with the penalty after the Roval. We saw him win the Chicago street course. So, that might be something for those guys to build off of. Of course, we're not quite going to turn the page to Mexico just yet. But yeah, I think overall, as a fan, and watching on Prime and just analyzing it that way, I think the racing was phenomenal. I like the fuel mileage races. I think it's great. You let these guys kind of work it out. It almost kind of had a super speedway feel to it because a lot of these guys didn't want to be in the lead, right? Because obviously the guys in the lead burned more fuel. So it was fun seeing Ty Gibbs and Chris Buescher and all those guys kind of mired in, just trying to tow along and get this thing to the end.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan, being that it's a 2 mile track and they don't have like, what we technically used to call restrictor plate racing, super speedways, they were able to draft. I mean, this was a fast track. They were hitting 200 miles an hour. And I thought it was awesome. And, I was reading something the other day that was talking about how Fox just got awarded for the broadcasting on NASCAR. And I'm sitting here thinking about it. It's like, as much as I've bitched about, all the different channels we're having to watch this on anymore, so far, I think Prime has been kicking ass. I mean, they're showing pit stall times. We've been wanting to see that for 2, 3 years now. We've been complaining about it. And the other thing I liked was when they did the burn bar, when they were showing the average miles per gallon. And, between like Brad Keselowski and William Byron, for example, showing, okay, he's getting 5 miles to the gallon, 0.2. Byron is getting 4.8. Who's burning fuel? And eventually that's what bit William Byron in the ass. He was running as hard as he could, but he ran out of gas. So unfortunately he didn't get the finish he wanted. But I do think Prime's doing a really damn good job of actually covering everything that we're wanting to see anymore. It's like, Fox, they missed a lot of stuff. They really did. It's like, they're calling accidents that are like a second or two late. It's like, oh wait, hey, by the way, we got someone down there in the wall. So far, I think Prime is doing a really damn good job. I still just hate having to see, 4 or 5 different channels and stuff watching this stuff. But so far, I'm all thumbs up for Prime.
Yeah, and I'm sure Sky will agree with me here in a moment, but Prime, I mean, just outstanding. I think it just has a more raw feel to it. These guys are actually able to use profanity if it comes out, because it's a paid stream service. They don't have the FCC regulations like they do on Fox and NBC.
Yeah.
So you just get, it's kind of like that behind the scenes feel a little bit, like HBO used to do Inside NASCAR. And I love it. It really makes you feel like you're there. You're getting to see and hear and feel all of the action. Dale Earnhardt Jr. gets so excited up in the booth. He's great at calling the action around the racetrack. And Steve Letarte and his knowledge. Yeah, I'm very impressed. I think it's exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, I was talking to my girlfriend during the race, and when Alex Bowman was being interviewed after that hit, he's like, shit just happens, and usually after that, if it's on NBC or on Fox, it's like, oh, excuse us for the language, sorry, blah blah blah. But you're right, it's a paid subscription, and so what? They drop a little bit of language, hey, that's the way it goes. These drivers are showing their emotions, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head, Kevin. It just kind of feels like you're there. To me, it feels like kind of like a barbecue with all your friends listening to it, and that's kind of how you want it to feel. It's more entertaining. Like you said, Dale Jr., he cracks me up half the time. If there's a wreck, he's yelling and screaming, and I just think it's hilarious. It's kind of just how like a lot of us act, whenever we're at the race. But I love Prime. I think it's amazing. I hope Fox looks at this and looks at all the praise and does better. I mean, it is unfortunate. It's spread across so many different streaming platforms and everything, but that's just how it is anymore. It's one of those things where either you can complain or you can get with it type thing. But Michigan, I thought it was just such a good race. And there's a few drivers, looking at the top 10. I mean, we talked about Ty Gibbs a few times this year and just how he wasn't performing as much or didn't have really the luck on his side. Bubba Wallace, I think this is his second top 10 in a row, so that's good for him. And Ross Chastain, I mean, I mentioned a few episodes ago was worried about Trackhouse, but here he is getting a P6. So there's some teams that are starting to turn it around, like you said, we got a couple more races to go, a couple more weeks to go before the playoffs. So that's some good news for them.
Yeah, and Kevin was giving me shit last week. He's like, dude, every time you take a race, you take the 24 or the 5. And Sky, you're right. I did take Ross Chastain last week. So Kevin, take that. But if the 24 wouldn't have ran out of gas, he might have won that race. But it was really cool, like you said, Sky, Ty Gibbs getting in P3 and Bubba Wallace in P4. Chastain did really good in P6. So it was really good to see those guys up there. And I'll tell you what I did like was actually, the number 60 of Ryan Preece getting a P9. So, this is usually a track that Fords dominate on. It was kind of mixed this week. I mean, about half the cars were Ford, then a few Toyotas, a few Chevys. But Michigan always seems to be a Ford track.
Great racetrack for sure. Our only 2 miler left, like we said, I think it definitely exceeded expectations. The fans were packed in there. It was great. We've talked about Prime. That's going to put pressure on TNT, who takes over here in a couple of weeks when we start this in-season challenge. I'm sure you guys have seen, the field for that and how this is going to work with 32 drivers that we're going to be looking at here towards the end of June once we click over to TNT. And the way I'm breaking it down is it basically kind of feels like the Dash for Cash a little bit, like the Xfinity Series does. It's going to be a bracket style. It's going to start in Atlanta, which, oh, by the way, just got renamed Echo Park. What is it? Echo Park Speedway, I believe, is their new name. Which a lot of people were kind of not really. Yeah, I know, Jeff, you're not a big fan of it, but I remind some of our older viewers or people that have been around a while. It used to be Lowe's Motor Speedway, right? Lowe's, the brick and mortar hardware store used to sponsor the entire racetrack before they changed it back to Charlotte. So it doesn't really roll off the tongue, Echo Park Speedway, but I'm sure it's just something we'll have to get used to. And that's where this in-season challenge is going to begin. And it just creates more things for us to keep an eye on, and gives the drivers a little bit of skin in the game. It's $1 million, so it's bragging rights and some money on the line. So it's going to be interesting to see as we get closer to Atlanta, breaking all that down.
It is, and it just shows me, a little bit of NASCAR, I don't know, money. I mean, it's like NASCAR is all about money and not sharing. As you all know, 23XI or 2311, Front Row Motorsports did lose their injunction. Right now, they've got 14 days to appeal, which is kind of crazy because, if they're not considered charter teams, that means they're going to have to race their way in. So every single race, the purses are like 2/3 less as far as prize money goes. So, I mean, it's really unfortunate. And, I feel for the teams. I mean, I think NASCAR should be sharing more of the money. And again, when these guys are working their asses off and, like we've talked about with the truck series and even some of the Xfinity races, if you don't finish in the top 3 to top 5 in the Xfinity series or the truck series, you're almost having to pay to race. So if you're not going to be able to get that amount of purse money as far as the other teams, just because they signed that contract and they are charter teams or obviously main teams, it just makes it really difficult for these guys. So I'm really hoping this will get overturned. It'll be June 26th before the potential has fielded the cars to open teams, but it does not, like I said, it does not guarantee them in the field. It does not. So I don't know what's going to happen there with 2311 and Front Row Motorsports, but hopefully something will be decided here in the next week or two.
Yeah, that entire situation is such a mess, and it's tough to just even try to go through, but I don't know. I think I seen somewhere, I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it was the lawyer. He just mentioned that they have, they knew that this was a possibility, so they have every intent in doing it. And I think it might have even been Denny said that they don't see how this won't happen, how one of the cars won't make the field. So I'm not too worried about it. I hope that it goes in their favor. I hope that NASCAR really gets, I don't know how to word it, get what they deserve. We can kind of even it out more because it seemed everything is the way it is now, but if we could expand it and spread the money out, I mean, think of all the stuff that teams could do. Think about all the ways instead of just NASCAR pushing NASCAR, you have all the different teams who have all this extra money that can do all these fun different, social media things or events or whatever, trying to spread the word. So we'll just have to see how it goes. Like you said, it's still 2 weeks before we really know, but I don't see any of the cars not making the field. But I don't know how long the teams could hold out for sure.
So I think we have 37 cars already lined up for Mexico next week. Catherine Legge is going to be in there. She's going to be down there, obviously competing with a few other guys. SVG, he's going to have to race his way in, but he's going to be one of my picks. I'm really looking at him. Same, is Carson Hocevar. He's down there too. I think he'll obviously He doesn't have to make his way in there. He's already in. But I'm really looking at SVG. I mean, I think Trackhouse Racing does a damn good job. And as good as SVG is, I like to call him Old Gizzy, like they do down under. Old Gizzy, I think he's going to be one of the guys we look at. But hometown favorite, Daniel Suarez. What do you guys think of Daniel Suarez hitting this on a road course?
Well, we know that he did win in Sonoma a few years ago. So, the 99 confined victory lane on a right-hander and a left-hander. He's obviously going to have a hometown crowd there. He's going to be a fan favorite. But, we don't have any data to go off of this track. The Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. We know F1's run there. I know we were mentioning before we jumped on the air that Denny Hamlin won this race, what was then the Busch Series, now Xfinity Series, 19 years ago. So, I think you can kind of throw that out, though. I mean, Denny didn't seem too confident about his road course racing skills. So what I like to do in these scenarios is I go back and I'm going to look at Austin, Texas. That was our last road course, and also an F1 style track. Christopher Bell, that was when he went on that 3-race win streak. William Byron, Tyler Reddick, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, and SVG. Right, and then you can pop back, look at Watkins Glen last year. Chris Buescher getting the win there. Shane Van Gisbergen. We had the Roval in the playoffs. Kyle Larson, Seabell, Byron. So there's a lot of names that are pretty consistent there. Is this where Chase Elliott finally takes back his road course warrior title and gets his first win in the next gen? So all those things are going to be, a factor. Obviously SVG is probably going to go into everybody's lineup, but I don't know if I guarantee him as the favorite. I think Seabell is kind of the road course favorite going into this.
You don't think old, the 20 of Christopher Bell can get that in there? Or how about AJ Allmendinger? I mean, this is a 2.4-mile track. There's a very, very long straightaway. There's 14 different turns. We got a 100-lap race. I think it's going to be really fun. But some of the interesting facts that I was looking at was actually like looking at the haulers. Like, okay, Mexico's got a lot of different rules. From what I'm understanding, like the haulers themselves have to cover up almost all of any alcohol related sponsorships on the haulers themselves, unless it has less than a 6% alcohol content. And that still has to be passed through a permit process. Anything in all CBDs, nicotines, tobaccos, casinos, not okay. So even the haulers are actually having to change all the shit and all their sponsors on the haulers themselves just to get into Mexico. And come to speak of that, I mean, it's a 72-hour drive for Michigan. These guys have a long haul to go. So these guys have been working their butts off, obviously, to have to change everything. It's like, wrapping a car and changing your sponsorship. Well, now they're having to wrap the haulers, take stuff off, and then it's like I think 40 hours from Michigan down to Laredo, Texas, and they've actually had to make special provisions to get the cars through, get the trucks through. It's going to be a really interesting process.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see some hiccups with all this. I mean, the first thing that popped in my head was Kyle Busch. He's sponsored by both a casino with BetMGM, Zone, which is like those nicotine pouches. So they might as well just bring a blank trailer through there. You mentioned the drive time, the customs, everything that's going to go into that. I'm sure you guys, we're still on baby watch for Jordan Fish there. It's due 7 days past due. And so Denny Hamlin made a statement today. He will not go to Mexico if she hasn't had the baby yet, because he's not going to be able to leave. It's a 4.5 hour flight, whether you're private or not. I mean, he's got a direct flight in there. He's got to go through customs. So that's going to get really interesting as we get through later into this week if Denny Hamlin is even going to make it to Mexico.
Yeah, Denny, I mean, it's going to be tough, man. I almost don't see him making the race because, like you said, she's already 7 days past due. I'm actually kind of surprised he made it through this race. And then, one thing I still remember, wasn't a couple of years ago when Kyle Busch was coming back through Mexico, and I think he had a gun or some shit on the jet. Got a little heat about that. Got in a little bit of trouble, but hey, he's pro. He got out of it. Good lawyers. But it's still just interesting how the different things that we have to do as far as getting down to Mexico. And one of the other things that I've noticed that each manufacturer will have to decide on different Louvre cooling systems for their first practice in Mexico. So, those Louvres, that's where you get your cooling right on the top of the hood. And they're having to do different adjustments for each one of the cars, and each one of the drivers and teams are going to have to decide how they want it to look, how they want it to get the flow through the system. But it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I totally wasn't even thinking about Denny still being on baby watch. So I hope I didn't hear him say that. But that's a good, honestly, it's a good move. It keeps the wife happy for sure, the girlfriend, whatever. But hopefully, I hope she has it before because I want him to get down there and race. I'm sure he wants to get down there and race. He doesn't want to miss out on that. But there's a couple drivers. I'm pretty excited because there's a few drivers that, like Alex Bowman, we were talking about him, but he's someone that maybe, you can keep your eye on this weekend. Honestly, I think he's one of the better road course racers. He's at least better than Chase Elliott. I mean, well, nowadays, I should say. I'm not gonna put
Yeah.
too much slack on the old nine there, but there's somebody like him and Michael McDowell, he's always, I feel like, around at the end. He might not be fighting for the lead, but that's someone who is consistent and probably will have a good run this weekend.
And like we are talking earlier, Michael McDowell is another one, unfortunately, in Michigan who took a little bit too much air out of his rear tires and caused him to get a flat tire out of there too. But I think you're right. I think Alex Bowman would be a good pick on this one. I mean, he's a damn good road course driver. And to your point, Chase Elliott, he just hasn't had it there for road courses in quite a while.
One of the big factors that's going to play into this week that I'm really personally curious is going to be the elevation. So Mexico City is 7,200 feet. I live in Denver, Colorado. We're at 5280 up here, right? We're a mile high. And we have Bandimere Speedway, which NHRA used to come through. And this was the most difficult racetrack for them to tune the air to fuel ratio. Hence why some of those lubes are going to be crucial because the air to fuel ratio at altitude is very different than where we run at sea level or even lower elevation. So that's going to be tough for these engineers, the engine builders, and these crew chiefs to adjust to, as far as horsepower goes. And the other thing to consider is just altitude sickness in general. I mean, people come out to Denver here, Jeff. You lived here for a long time. I've been here almost 20 years. You feel the altitude if you're not used to it. And so some of these crew members are staying in Aspen, Colorado this week, which is about 9,000 feet in elevation. They're going to stay out there this week to acclimate to the altitude. Because I mean, everyone knows it's harder to breathe. There's less air, and so they're taking every fine detail there, Jeff, to prepare for this altitude.
Yeah, they really are. And one thing I've learned from living in Colorado, my folks live at almost 9,000 feet elevation. Tums, believe it or not, Tums helps with altitude sickness. Get yourself in a lukewarm bath and take some Tums, and that'll actually help with the nausea and stuff. But you're right, absolutely. The elevation makes a huge change, and I kind of compare it to two-stroke motorcycles. You got to compare your jetting when you're jetting that fuel, kind of like we talked about plate racing. It's actually not plates anymore. It's more of jetting about how much fuel is being allowed through. And you have to give that into consideration, when you are at certain elevations, just like you mentioned at Bandimere Speedway. It's a tough track when you're sitting at 5,280 feet. So I think that's going to be a huge thing that the crew chiefs are going to be taking into consideration. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. It's going to be a great race, I think. But we might see some mechanical failures. I'm expecting it.
Yeah, I'm expecting it to probably be a bumpy ride either way, just because it is a new track or a track that, new to the Cup Series. So I'm sure there'll be some hiccups that'll have to work out. But I didn't even think about that altitude thing. It really goes to show how much goes into NASCAR. It's not just turning left and right. I mean, you said they got the crews trying to get them accustomed to the high altitudes. I mean, that's such a smart thing. It's not something that you think about every day. So I'm sure it'll be a really great race. It sounds like the teams are prepping pretty hard. So I'm definitely pretty excited.
Yeah, as we know, or a lot of people may or may not know, the United States Olympic team, they actually train in Colorado Springs. And that's because if you can get used to that elevation, then, you can perform much better at lower elevations. So being able to prepare yourself for a higher altitude, going to Aspen, like Kevin was saying, about 9,000 feet elevation, you're getting used to it because the oxygen level just isn't there. I mean, we look at it at baseball with Coors Field. I mean, that back wall back there is about 20 feet longer than any other, baseball stadium because the air is thinner. So the ball travels further. So elevation is going to play a huge part of this race and the way that these crew chiefs can adjust to it.
Well, and especially with tire pressure, because, again, the thinner air, the different air pressure, just the barometric pressure of the atmosphere. That's what's crazy about it. There's like the whole science that goes into altitude. 7,200 feet is pretty high, as we know, Jeff. I mean, there's some peaks here in Colorado that are that altitude. So no question that's going to play into the performance of the crew members. It's going to weigh on the drivers even. Denny was saying, "Are you prepared for this altitude?" And he's like, these guys are in pretty good shape. I mean, they're in the gym 3, 4 days a week, practicing on the sim. But until you're on the ground and you start to feel that thin air, I mean, we see these drivers' heart rates now. We really don't race at altitude anywhere. I mean, I'm trying to go through the whole country, and I think probably Bristol would maybe be the highest altitude, being that it's in the mountains of Tennessee, but nothing like what we're going to see this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, Mexico City, it's going to be a completely different race. So, like I said, the crew chiefs, the pit crews, the drivers themselves, they're all going to have to acclimate. And hopefully they can do that in time. I'm glad you brought up the point that they are going. A lot of them are going up to Aspen to kind of get used to that elevation because it is harder to breathe. It is, man. You run out of breath a lot quicker when you're up there versus compared to sea level. I mean, Sky and I both live pretty much, sea level. I'm about 500 feet above sea level, and Sky, I think you're right there at sea level, right?
Yeah, just about, yeah. So I totally, yeah, it'll be an interesting race. I'm glad that, especially because, with those teams, I mean, they're whipping really heavy tires and gas cans and everything else. Hopefully, Denny can keep all his guys together today and not do anything crazy, not go whenever he wants instead of on the jack. But jumping into Mexico City, who are some people you would pick for fantasy? I've been doing better. I've been getting my fantasy locks in, but I got to hear, like, who's some people do you think I should look out for?
I think we definitely covered a lot of them. I mean, I'm going to try to save guys where I can here, because I'm getting pretty low on the Kyle Larsons and the William Byrons and guys that I try to make points on. Even Ryan Blaney, which that was a waste of a use for me. I had to get my garage driver in, but you got to go road course heavy here. Like you said, I think Michael McDowell is a great pick. AJ Allmendinger is a no-brainer. SVG is a no-brainer. Christopher Bell, if you have the uses. Even Tyler Reddick. I mean, I know Tyler Reddick hasn't found victory lane yet, but he's been good on road courses in the past. Yeah, so I think those are kind of my early lineup. I think I'll stay away from the Brad Keselowskis and the Denny Hamlins this week, just based on their history at road courses.
I think Tyler Reddick's a really good pick if you got uses on him. I mean, he's a great driver. He does really well at the road courses. I'd really like to see Chris Buescher up there again. I love the 17 car right down here from Prosper, Texas. Well, I mean, I know he lives in Mooresville now, out there in Charlotte. But yeah, of course, AJ, the ringer, the road course ringer. AJ is definitely going to be in the lineup. I think you're right about Kyle Busch. I'm kind of stay away from him. But as far as Chris Buescher, AJ, and then of course, you always have to look at someone like you said, like Christopher Bell, if you got it, because it's tough, man. He's been winning so many mile and a halves. He's got 3 wins this year. So it's hard when you want to pick someone like that is good at the road courses. But do you have enough uses left at him on fantasy? And by the way, I did take Sky's recommendation um, last week as far as putting him in there, and it did me well. Thank you, Sky.
Well, that's what's fun about the fantasy side of it. Yeah, I mean, we're at that point. We have 11 races. Just went through this guy, including this weekend, until we get to the playoffs. And then for folks that haven't done fantasy, what will end up happening is we don't reset, but what we'll end up doing is we get 5 uses for the 10 race playoffs. So you basically have to stagger them a little bit. You get 5 uses for the 10 race run. And then between now and Daytona, what you have, you got to try to conserve it because you start running out of picks, as we get into August. And like I said, we got 4 road courses, including Mexico City, between now and the playoffs, 4 out of 11. So these guys are definitely, we're going to be talking SVGs and we're going to be talking Mike McDowell a lot. And that's going to kind of help you save picks. And then, next week when we get into Pocono, or in 2 weeks when we get into Pocono, that's kind of a road course similar feel. The road course guys typically run well at Pocono, so that's something to consider as well. But those are my picks going in, and I guess I'll be the first to say I am going to go with Shane Van Gisbergen as the winner this weekend because I know one of you were going to take him, so I'm going SVG.
I'm going to go with the road course ringer, AJ Allmendinger.
So I have no pressure this week now that Chris Buescher didn't finish first last week. So I'm gonna go. This is gonna be a little crazy, but I'm gonna go Chase Elliott. And the only reason I'm going Chase Elliott is because he led some laps, at Michigan. I feel like he got some morale there. He's been doing good. He's been consistent. I'll say consistent. I mean, he did finish 15th, but I don't know. I just have a good feeling about the 9 this week, and I think he finally ends that winless streak, and he he's the first one to do it here in Mexico.
Let's see it. I hope he does.
It'd be good for him and that team. They need something big, and this would be a good opportunity to do it. Great place to have some fun and celebrate with it. We have 2 practice sessions this week, guys. I'm super excited about that. We've gotten so used to this practice and then qualify immediately. Throw that out. We're on track Friday for 2 practice sessions, which these guys need bad. These crew chiefs need all the data we can get, seeing how these air pressures are going to change at altitude and all that. So 2 practices, and then we come back Saturday for qualifying. So that's going to put a little bit of stress, as we mentioned earlier, on Denny Hamlin's window here on baby watch, because he needs to be on the ground in Mexico by Friday morning, and that's going to come up pretty quick. So we'll see what happens. We're dropping this Monday night. I hope Denny makes it there, of course. But I think this is going to be a really, really fun race. I'm excited for the Mexico fans to, be able to come out and see NASCAR. They haven't had any stock car race in there, or at least at this Premier Cup level ever. So this is a big deal for not only Mexico City, but for our sport, growing our market a little bit. And I think it's going to be tremendous.
Yeah, I'm really excited. We'll have to see how it goes. We'll have to see how all of our picks fare out. Although it definitely will probably be Shea Vegas-Bergen, honestly, truthfully, who will win.
As long as he doesn't get in his own way and he doesn't beat himself, there's so many opportunities to make mistakes, pit road, whatever the case may be. But I think the best driver on road courses, given no hiccups, is going to be SVG. So I'm excited. Let's get down to Mexico, have a little bit of fun down there. We will be back next Monday night to break down all of the action from south of the border. Be sure to follow us across the board at Mash the Gas, and follow NASCAR Sky over there at NASCAR Sky. And let's take it on down south. We're going down to Mexico. And until then, y'all.
Mash the gas.